You don't have to be a giant Star Wars fan to recognize a Stormtrooper or a Clone Trooper instantaneously. Now, I've never been a giant Star Wars fan. I know having this kind of throws that perception off, but you know, I will get to that in a second. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't love Clone Troopers growing up. Honestly, I had so many Lego Star Wars sets and action figures of the Clone Troopers, and I don't really know what the appeal was, but it was just so cool to me. I think it was always the helmets and like the visors. You couldn't see their faces, but you could see like who the important characters were with like the little color streaks on top of their helmet, just like this one. Something about it was always just so badass to me, and I really wanted to be one. And if you're not a stranger to the internet, you've probably seen people decked out in these armor sets on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, whatever it may be. And for me personally, whenever I see that, I'm always just like, how much do these armor sets cost? Do these people make them themselves? How exactly does it work? Because these look immaculate. It's not like they're just ordering them like on Amazon. They're not going to a Spirit Halloween store to find one of these things and be like, oh, let me pay like $50 and get a set. No, these are like armor sets that you would see on the actual Star Wars set. Now, if you were to actually look at this piece in great detail, you would see how much effort went into making this. This is physically handmade. There's like weathering on the side. You can see all the different little pieces that went into it that were attached later on, and just the amount of details that are in here is insane. And coincidentally, I have a friend down in Baltimore who makes these things for a living, which is how I got this one. And he invited me down to see the whole process of prop making and really what it's about.
I'm Quentin, and I go by Atlas. I just do it as like more of a, oh hey, I don't want to connect my person to my art. I want to have people be like, oh hey, look at this guy, he's just doing this thing. Right now we are in my workshop. Recently this year I decided, well, hey, let's go all out, make a bunch of armor sets. I started off, I was a stop motionist. I made a lot of stop motion films, and I wanted to move towards live action. And with that, it was kind of like, okay, what do people do with live action? And I was like, okay, Star Wars. I like Star Wars. Let's try to see what I could do with live action Star Wars stuff. And I saw people making Star Wars Clone Trooper armor. I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. Let's freaking go for that. And then eventually, when I graduated was when I was like, okay, I gotta find a job. I gotta find something that I actually like doing that can actually pay me. But at the same time, I wanna have fun. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna buy this armor set off eBay. And that's actually how I got started. Well, at the time, nobody did it because it's like, you know, they didn't have 3D printers. There wasn't really a large place like Etsy that you could just buy the armor from. Then I had to make a backpack for my armor set. I'm like, okay, I know a little bit about like making cosplay stuff because I'd watched a lot of videos about it on YouTube. After that, I had to get ready for a convention, and this convention was Star Wars Celebration. But I had somebody reach out to me who saw that I was making a backpack, and he was like, hey, I need a backpack myself. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. I only really know how to make the one, but I can try to make a new one. I don't know why. For some reason, I didn't think the world worked where I can be paid for this. So I was like, well, I guess I found my job. And after that, it was finding out what I could and couldn't do. When I started, I didn't do a lot of conventions. Like, I believe around like the second year of my prop making was when I actually started attending conventions. I mostly went to Star Wars Celebration just to meet up with like a bunch of old friends that I've like, you know, never really gotten a chance to hang out with. But like Star Wars cosplay fell into the loop of actually being something that I could do there. So I was like, okay, let's also do this while we're here. I went to Otakon, and that was like the first convention, the first big convention that wasn't Star Wars that I went to. I was like, you know, finally meeting up with like people who weren't really just Star Wars fans. I was like meeting up with anime creators. Around that time was when I was like, okay, I can do commissions for other things other than Star Wars. I wasn't really into anime at the time. It took a while for it to grow on me, but like I believe the first one that I liked was Kill La Kill, and I made like the scissor blade for it, and then that's kind of where it fell downhill from there, where it's like, okay, Overwatch is coming out, let's make Diva headsets, and that was a big thing that I had done. Overwatch was the gateway to anime. I originally started out doing helmets only. They're more detailed for me. I feel like they're a very good challenge to give myself. I've kind of stayed away from doing like, you know, armor and just focused on helmets for like a majority of the start of my career. Until around 2017, I branched out to starting on like actually doing armor sets like 02. I did a Republic Commando armor set. And then after that I was like, hey, this is kind of a good challenge to give myself. Let's start to, branch out and actually do this kind of thing. We're here in my shop right now where I create and finish all of my products. Over here we have my molding and casting supplies that I use to create all of my pieces, and spray paints for finishing and painting everything. Over here we have my Bridgeport mill. This is a very old machine, from what I've been told 70 years old, that is used for making precision parts. I use it for making props, of course. I'm able to add attachments that can run on top of this to go alongside a lot of the tracks and all the travels that this piece has. So we've got an up, down, X, Y, Z axis on this machine that I'm able to utilize to help me get as many precision details as I need to get. So over here on my workbench, we have a lot of the old pieces that I've been able to do, as well as some of the newer pieces for some of my favorite artists that I've been able to work on. This one right here is for one of my favorite artists of all time, Luntunes. I got really lucky to be able to work with her, and I can't wait to be able to show off whenever this is finished. Here we have the vacuum forming machine. I use it for making a lot of thin vacuum formed plastic pieces. How it works is, I will take a plastic sheet, put it into the tray, and pull the heating element over top of it. Once that's done, I'll turn on my vacuum pump and my air compressor to allow it to do the pneumatics and the vacuum pull. The sheet of plastic is heated up. After that, the piece is fully finished and ready to go. I'm going to say, design-wise, I've made at least 50 helmets. As a production, it's been at least 2,500, I'd say. With my Mandalorian, for instance, I start off with making a rough, idea of what kind of sculpt I'm gonna be doing. I do a lot of like media research first, where it's like I'll look over what the helmet has on it, and I'll be like, okay, do I need this kind of material? Will this work here? Will this clay work? Will I be able to do this as a hard sculpt first and avoid the whole soft sculpt process? I didn't have the fin, I didn't have the ears, I didn't have any of the hard parts, like the solid edges at all carved into it. I started off as just a rough base, and then I continued from there, sculpting up the surface, adding on all the little parts at the end. A lot of the times, it's mostly figuring out which part of the helmet is going to be the hardest to do in soft and then the easiest to do in hard. So I'll do I'll do all the groundwork whenever I start it with a soft sculpt. And if I can avoid doing it in a soft sculpt and move it into the hard sculpt phase, which is doing it as a solid plastic sheet. Most of my process at the start, easy to figure out because my clay is reusable whenever it starts off, but then later on, that's when I actually have to pick out the materials that I'm supposed to be using for it. They're mostly made out of urethane resin, so it's like types of plastics that I'll have to find the tolerances that will work with it. Larger ones, for instance, I'll definitely want it to be a little bit more rigid, and then for smaller ones, I'll be able to do softer plastics. So where we are right now is my basement, and this is where I kind of, get all of my work done in the temperature controlled comfort of my house. Obviously, this is just my basement. I don't really have any, special things down here like mills, lathes, or any kind of machine that could get me questioned by OSHA, but we've got over here just my storage of helmets, we've got a bunch of supplies, and I'm gonna walk you through it right now. So over here we have my set of helmets that I've finished throughout the years. Obviously, you're able to collect a few of your own pieces whenever you've been doing this for at least over 8 years or so.
But if it's 7 years, you're not allowed to keep your own pieces.
Yeah, no, if it's 7 years, you don't get this. A few months ago, heck no, they wouldn't have let me have them. Everyone would have come over and confiscated them from me. So for a lot of these helmets I wanted to make at the very start of my career, but I wasn't able to because it's just, a lot of them were very difficult to get done. A lot of the shapes would have been something that I'm not able to actually capture. And I understood that at the time because, I I wasn't an idiot whenever I was getting started. I was able to look at things objectively and be like, okay, this is good, but it won't pass as perfect the way I want it to. And it's very hard to grasp that whenever you're starting, even though you have a general idea of this needs to happen, but I don't know how to make it happen. For me, sitting down and painting up all of my helmets to look like different characters that I admire over the years was something that really inspired me to keep moving forward in my career and pursuing different helmets that I was able to do. For a lot of these helmets, the approach was that there's just so many that not a lot of fans would be able to buy originally. So it's like I wanted to be the person who could give the opportunity to find these kind of characters that everyone admired just as much as I did. Commander Cody, Wolf, Rex. I love this design. Let's put this on a helmet and, you know, have people be able to purchase it if they wanted to. Roughly for every armor set, there's 28 pieces that I need to make, but because there's so many different sets that I've made over the years, there's over 200 different pieces. What you saw before were my finished pieces, but over here is the master molds and all the parts that make up my finished parts. A lot of these parts would take me from around like a few hours to get sculpted, but to get them perfect is going to take years and years of perfection. Well, right now, the biggest project that I'm looking forward to would be my Clone Trooper armor sets. I've been trying to get them all finished for like around 3 years. And ever since like I got started, it's been like, oh, this is nice, but it can be so much better, right? You're an artist, you want to represent your work the best way that you possibly can. I want to make sure that everything that I put out is like 100% representative of the kind of quality that I as an artist can put into it. You can reach me on Instagram at atlas.co, and my website for where I sell my stuff is atlasarmory.com.